Hi guys, today is such an exciting video, one that I've never done before, and I don't know why, but I decided this year I'm gonna be doing my top 10 favorite books of the entire year. So I ranked 10 books, I have them here, and I'm gonna be going in order, which I think I've said this before, but I'm so bad at ranking books or like rating books in general. I'm so strict with what I give a 5-star. Like honestly, most of these books I probably wouldn't even give a 5-star rating, but they were in my top 10 of the year because my 5-star list is like my ultimate all-time favorites. I think I have a couple in here that are 5 stars, like once I get towards like the top 5. So we'll talk about that when it comes, but I have my top 10 here. I cheated a little bit, like some of them are tied, but I actually couldn't narrow it down between some of them. So this is gonna be the video I upload right before my every single book I read in 2022 video. We're gonna be going through like this in that video. For now, I just have the stack right here and I'm gonna be counting down from 10. Starting strong at number 10 is The Way I Used to Be by Amber Smith, and this is not a romance. I know I normally talk about romance on my channel, so disclaimer before you pick up this book, not a romance. It's actually about a girl who was sexually assaulted and it's her story after it happens, and it's just so sad, and you know I love sad books, and it's also just like a book that makes you feel something, which I felt is really special, and I think everyone should read this book in their life. Unless that topic is too heavy for you, then I wouldn't read it because it is very graphic, but I loved this book so much, and it's just so realistic, and it just shows how this terrible thing that happened to her affected her for the next like 4 years, I think, in so much detail. Just every relationship she had, every situation she was in was affected by this assault that happened to her. So I really could not recommend it enough. If you want to read a sad book and something deep and meaningful, I would definitely recommend this book. So that was one of my first favorites. Then my 9th favorite book was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This was her new release of the year, and she's one of my favorite authors. I can't wait for her new book that's coming out next year. I'm sure it will be on my next year's favorites video, but this was like a small town romance, which you know is my favorite, except it had like a twist to it because they're actually both living and working in New York City, but he's from a small town, and she ends up going on vacation in this small town and running into him, and they're kind of like work rivals, so they have like this enemies kind of vibe, and then they're both in this small town, forced proximity, and they fall for each other. But I really loved the girl character in this book. There's so many quotes in this book about being a woman in the workforce and being like a girl boss, except they call her like a bitch and bossy and all this stuff. She's really just like an assertive, powerful woman, and it talks a lot about that, which I really liked, and also the romance was just really, really cute. I loved Charlie the boy in this book. I just really enjoyed it. I love Emily Henry's writing. Next, I read pretty recently, and I haven't seen like anyone talk about this book. It's called In a Jam by Katie Canterbury. It's also a small town romance, which you know is my favorite. I did a whole video about it. This book is a second chance romance, which is another one of my favorite tropes, except they basically were like best friends in high school in this small town, except she was popular and he was not, and so they were like kind of secret friends, and then he was always in love with her. She never knew that, and then she moves back to this town because she inherits her grandma's house, and then he's still living in that town, and she's like, I didn't know you'd still be here. Like, we always talked about how we wanted to get out of this town, but really she was the only one that left, and he has been in love with her for all of these years. He is the biggest simp. He's so in love with her. It's dual point of view, so you get to see his perspective, except she has no idea he's ever felt this way about her. It's only in his head, and it like slowly starts coming out, and that was like my favorite part about this book. Also, it's like single dad trope, and it's just so good and so cute, and I definitely recommend it. I haven't seen enough people talking about it. Then coming in at number 7 is the Mindfuck series by S.T. Abbey. This is actually 5 books in one, but it's one giant book. This series is, again, not really fully a romance. It's kind of like mystery romance, but it's very dark. The boy love interest is an FBI agent, and he's trying to crack this serial killer case at the same time as he's falling in love with this woman, and it turns out the woman is a serial killer. Don't want to encourage it because it sounds crazy because you're like, oh my god, you like the serial killer, but like you have to read it to know. She's getting revenge on people, and it's very dark and twisted, but it is, I've never been so like enraptured in a series in my life. Like, I read this many books in like 3 days. I couldn't stop. Like, every time I got to the end of the chapter, it was a cliffhanger, and I had to keep going. I was like, oh my god, is he gonna find out? What is gonna happen? Do I want him to find out? Do I want them to stay together? Am I like encouraging her? Like, I don't know how I feel. And it's kind of a mystery. You're unfolding why she's doing what she's doing, to who. It's just this whole story. So there's so much more of a plot line than just the romance. If you like dark romance, which I don't like dark romance that much, but this I really enjoyed. It's just like really, really entertaining. Like, it feels like you're watching a movie, like a thriller while you're reading it. Number 6 is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. I really loved this book just because it reminded me of Love and Other Words, which is one of my favorite books ever, and I felt like this was kind of like a replica of that book, so that's kind of why I like it. It's past and present perspective about this couple that were best friends growing up. They go to this lake house every summer. They were like falling in love when they were like younger and teenagers, and then something happens and you don't know what. Classic past and present perspective. You get to the present and she's coming back to the town trying to like apologize and make the situation situation better for whatever went down between them years ago. I feel like the beginning of this book, I was like, oh my god, this is so cute and perfect. Then the middle, I was like, what happened between them? Like, I want them to be together in the present, but what happened? And at the end, when I found out what happened, I was like, that is not what I expected at all. It kind of hurt my own feelings. I just thought the romance was really cute. The next books I actually couldn't choose between, so tying for 5th place is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score and Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. Things We Never Got Over is another small town romance, which was like my thing this past year. I don't know why. It's grumpy sunshine and so good. Kind of single parent trope, forced proximity. She's living on his property and he's so grumpy. She also works for him. She just moved to the small town and he has such a soft spot for her, but he doesn't show it. He's like so mean to her at first. And then there's all this drama with her family and everything in the small town, and I remember having butterflies while I was reading this. It is really long too, and I'm pretty sure there's another book, like the second book in the series is coming out very soon. Can't wait to read that, but I definitely recommend this if you like grumpy sunshine. And then Icebreaker is figure skater hockey romance. I read this one recently and I can't wait for the rest of the series because it's going to be a companion sports romance series. The build-up was so good. I thought this book was gonna be a perfect 5 stars, like up until I got to like the 80% mark. And you know, once you get to like the end and then there's like the 3rd act breakup and like all that shit, like it wasn't very predictable, but like it was. Like once I got to 80%, I was like, oh my god, this is a 5 star. And then after that, I was like, I don't know. Yeah, I loved like the whole build up this romance so much. Like I've never read characters like this that communicate with each other so well. Like there was no miscommunication. Like they were always talking through every single issue they had with each other. Whenever they were upset, they talked about it in so much detail. Honestly, I was like, I need to take notes on this. Like they're kind of really good at communicating. I need to learn from them. Like usually in romance books, like the exact opposite happens because they need a miscommunication. So I really enjoyed that about this book. Also, I just like had the biggest crush on the boy. Oh my god, so good. I really recommend it if you like sports romance, like easy read college romance. Icebreaker, really good. Okay, then in 4th place, another series is Magnolia Park's, I don't know what the series is called, Magnolia Park series. So there's 3 books, there's 4 books out now. I'm about to read the 4th one. I don't know if it's even come out in America yet. I know it came out in the UK, so I'm patiently waiting, but it's Magnolia Park's Daisy Hates and Magnolia Park's The Long Way Home. And then the next one is the second Daisy Hates book. This companion novel series about different couples. These 2 are the same couple, and this one and the new one are the same couple. So if you like that kind of intertwined couples that get multiple books, you'll like this series. I've talked about this so many times, so like I don't want to give the same explanation, but in case you haven't heard me talk about it. So the couple that's these 2 books is childhood friends to lovers, except they've basically been dating since they were little kids, except they're the most toxic couple ever. And like when I read these, I was never like, oh my god, I want them to be together, I ship them so much. Never did I feel that way. I was always like, they are horrible for each other, except they love each other so much, except they're so toxic. Like I don't even want them to be together anymore. Like they're terrible to each other, especially the guy. Oh my god, he's the most frustrating male character I've ever read about. But he also like loves her so much that you like forgive him, but you also don't. You like kind of try to forgive, but you never forget what he's done. And then she retaliates, and it's just this back and forth toxic romance. And that's why I always say if you like Gossip Girl and like the whole Blair and Chuck vibe, you would love Magnolia Parks, because it is just so entertaining but so frustrating. It's not like a happy romance at all. And then Daisy Hates, which is the second book, it's a whole like found family trope. So this is like about other friends in the friend group, kind of more of a mafia romance, which is like a little twist on it. I love this couple so much. Still kind of toxic, not as toxic as Magnolia Parks, but still really good. And I cannot wait to read their second book that just came out. I'm gonna try to read it before the year ends. I have like 5 days left, so who knows. I don't even know if it's out in America yet. I've seen people talking about it, but it's not available on my Amazon, so I don't know. I love the whole found family trope, and I can't wait to see what other friends of the friend group are gonna get books over time. Yeah, I just really love this series, even though it's like so frustrating. I feel like if it was able to evoke that many emotions in me, then it must be some kind of good, you know? Okay, completely different note, tying for 3rd place, because I also couldn't choose between these 2, are 2 Taylor Jenkins Reid books, Malibu Rising and One True Loves. I read this book twice this year because I read it in the beginning of the year and then I reread it and annotated it for my best friend for her birthday, because I was like, you need to read this. So I feel like because I reread it, I appreciated it so much more because I already knew it was gonna happen, and then I got to focus on all like the build up and the details. This one tells the story of Nina, who's the oldest daughter of a family and has 2 parents that just like do not take care of their family. She's basically had to raise her siblings since she was like 13 years old, honestly maybe even younger. Like she literally was driving them to school when she was like 14. They live in Malibu. I love the setting. They all surf together. Basically you see this flashbacks of her growing up taking care of her siblings and like having this huge pressure on her shoulders, like to take care of her family and provide for her family, but they never had money and they were always scraping together to make ends meet. The book kind of follows the storyline, so it like switches around, but you also see her parents falling in love and how her parents met and how her parents turned out the way they did. And so you get that perspective. And then it follows the siblings, the 4 siblings, on this night that they're throwing this huge party. You see each hour what's happening. There's just so much drama. I feel like the whole premise of the story is to see how like the parents' relationships, everything the parents did wrong and how it affected the kids, and then watching the kids repeat that cycle in their own life, and also trying to break the cycle of everything their parents did wrong. And I loved it so much. I feel like I learned so many life lessons in this. It's so good and it was so impactful to me. I loved it. And then One True Loves is more romancy, kind of. Basically, Emma was in love with her high school sweetheart. They were like so obsessed with each other, so in love. And then he dies in a plane crash or helicopter crash or something like that. She's basically distraught for the next like 3 years after this happens, and she ends up rekindling with this other kid from high school that always had a crush on her, and she ends up falling in love with him. So you're seeing her kind of like grieve and fall in love again, which she deserved after this like horrible thing happened to her. And now she's super in love with this new guy, and then she gets a phone call and it's her ex-husband being like, hey, I actually wasn't dead. They found me. I've been like stuck on this remote island for the past 3 years. I'm coming home to you. She's like, she has a husband, a dead husband who's not dead. Now she loves both of them and she doesn't know what to do. That sounded like a really big spoiler synopsis, but I promise that's exactly what the back of the book says. And you find all of that out within the first chapter, and then the whole book goes back in time showing all her relationships unfolding. So that wasn't a spoiler. There's so much more to this book. That's just the general premise. I just basically told you what's on the back of the book. Every time I talk about that, I feel like I'm spoiling it, but I swear I'm not. Okay, then I couldn't choose which one was first or second. So I'm just gonna put this one as second and the other one as first because I just read this one. So it's gonna come in second place, but I just finished reading this. I already know it's just gonna be one of my new all-time favorite series, and I can't wait to see more books come out because there's only 2 books out so far. It was Binding 13 and Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh. These are the only 2 books out right now, but they're huge. Like, look how big these books are. It's basically like 4 books, and it's about one couple so far, but I don't even know how to explain it. If you like the Addicted series, read this right now. This is the only thing I've ever found that's comparable to it in the found family sense, in the romance sense, and the characters being so well developed. Like, it's just so good, and there's only 2 books out so far. This is Johnny and Shannon's story, and she's basically a new girl at school. He's super popular and a few grades older than her. It's their romance, except it's also found family. Like, she comes from a super abusive and horrible household. Trigger warning before you read that. Like, it's very dark and like heavy, but their friend group that forms is so cute, and it's just like the perfect found family, especially because they're young. They're only in high school, so like to have this close of a friend group is like so cute to me, and I can't wait to read the other members of the friend group's romance because they like hint at other couples, and I'm so excited. Shannon just comes from such a rough household, and she's really close with her older brother, who her older brother is also part of the kind of friend group, and he's like, you just have to read it. The characters are so good, and it's one of those things where you just form such a good connection to all the characters, and the story and the romance is so good. If you loved the Addicted Calloway Sisters series, read this one. I just love this series so much. It's definitely probably my favorite of the year, but I'm putting it as number 2 because I just read it, and my number 1 has been my favorite since like last January. So my number 1, you already know this because I post about it like every single day, because I swear this has like the best quotes I've ever read. This is a non-fiction book. Who am I? I don't know, but it's Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. It's perfect to me. This book is perfect to me. I love it so much. It's a memoir of Dolly's life growing up in London. Like it says parties, dates, friends, jobs, life, and love. The life lessons I learned from this book, it shows all of her romances, all of her friendships, all of her experiences growing up like in her 20s, even in her late teenagers through 20s, is just so good and so powerful. And like, it made me want to be able to write a book like this one day. Like, I want to start living my life to the fullest so I can write a memoir one day like this. This whole book talks about her romances with different men, but then you get to the end, it's like everything she knew about love was in her friendship with women, and it's just so good. Like, no one really understands like how powerful a female friendship is, like when you have like your best friend, and she talks about that, and it just is so good and like completely changed my perspective on thinking about love, because when you think about love, you think about everything you learn about in like romantic relationships. I really recommend this if you're in your 20s. It's like the perfect book for you to read. I couldn't recommend it enough. And then I have an honorable mention, which is probably against the rules, but I don't care, it's my channel so I can make the rules. This is an honorable mention because I'm reading it right now and I'm like 70% in, and I think actually so far, like up to this point, it'd probably be in like almost my top 5, but since I'm not done with it, I didn't want to include it just in case like it just like randomly goes downhill. But the book I'm currently reading is Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. I love this book so much so far, but I just needed to mention it because I know it deserves to be in this, but I'm just not done with it yet. It's a second chance romance, I think, because I don't know how it ends. So I don't know if it's gonna have a happy ending, but like, I don't even care. It's just still so good. It reminds me a lot of Normal People, but if Normal People was written as like a romance, because you know, Normal People is not really a romance, it's more like a character-driven story. This is more of a romance version of Normal People. So it starts off, read like the first few chapters, and it's them reuniting, and you're like, who are these people? It's like them seeing each other in a subway and like missing each other, but both of them are like, oh my god, no way, that was them. And then you go back in time 15 years and you watch them meet and fall in love in college, and then you watch them fall out of touch with each other and like what happened between them. So I just finished watching them fall in love. Like, I just finished all of the 15 years ago chapters of them falling in love, and it was so good. It's set in New York City, they go to NYU, and now I'm into the 15 years in the future chapters where they're not together. They've been in separate marriages, relationships, 15 years apart, and then they see each other in the subway and they're like, oh my god, I have to find him, I have to find her, we have to figure out what went wrong. Even though they were only together for 1 year, they've like compared everyone they've ever met in their life to this one person that they met, and they just know, they're soulmates, okay? But they keep missing each other, and there's always something in the way, and it's so good. And I love that it's set in New York City just because like I love the vibes. I just love everything so far. I have this much left, so I'm like, so much could happen in this little part. Like, you know, I don't know how it's gonna end. Are they gonna be together? Like, are they just gonna like reminisce on this time they had together when they were young? I don't know, but it's so good, and stay tuned to hear me talk about it more once I finish it in like future videos, because I can't tell you yet, but I definitely think it deserved to be in this video because I know it's gonna be a favorite, hopefully, if it doesn't tank towards the end. But those are my top 10 books, even though I cheated a lot. That was my top 10 ranking of 2022, and I hope you enjoyed it. These are the books I talk about the most throughout this year, so I'm sure you've read some of them if you take my recommendations, but if not, you definitely should, because these were my favorites. But stay tuned for my next video, which will be every single book I read this year with like a little synopsis about each one, or like what I rated it. The books I didn't like, kind of the opposite of this, I'll mention in that video, because I had a lot of misses this year. I did. Unfortunately, this was like one of my worst reading years ever, but I did get to have like these 10 books that I really loved. So if any of these books were also in your top 10, please leave them below. Actually, you should just recommend me your top 10. List your top 10 of the year, because I'll add them to my TBR for the next year, because I'm gonna try to have a better reading year next year with like less flops, because I feel like I wasted so much reading time reading flops in 2022. So I'm gonna try to avoid that for the next upcoming year. But if you want to follow me on my other social medias, they're all linked down below as always. I'll see you in my next video very, very soon, the last one of the year, which will be my entire reading recap, and I can't wait. I'll see you in my next video very, very soon. Bye!